Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We are delighted to welcome you to this e-reputation webinar. I'm Rohit Chauhan, local SEO consultant at Partoo, and I'm accompanied by my colleague Nithin John and Sebastian Blum from the marketing team. We wanted to start off by thanking all of you for taking out the time to be with us today. We are really glad that you joined us, and we'll try to make the next 30 minutes a valuable learning experience for all of you. So moving forward, in the next 20 minutes, we'll cover four key elements in order to build a strong e-reputation of your brand. Firstly, we'll walk you through the main figures that will illustrate the importance of online presence based on our 2020 barometer. Secondly, we'll be analyzing reviews to find out the reason for customer satisfaction and dissatisfaction. Third, why respond to online reviews and how to get organized. Last but not the least, how to get more reviews. So don't hesitate to ask a question in the chat box. We have saved time at the end to discuss and answer them. We'll also be adding polls throughout the webinar to make it as engaging as possible. You'd be able to find all the polls and other options on the top right side of your screen. Well, just to put everyone on the same page, we are only going to talk here about Google reviews, even if Facebook and TripAdvisor reviews are still important. Why are reviews important? Today, the younger generation is more digital focused and relies on social proof to make their choices. This becomes a main factor that will determine the position of your listing on Google. Precisely, we are talking about average score, number of reviews, and frequency of reviews. These are all the elements that will bring you up in the search result. Moving forward, the first thing I wanted to present to you is the explosion in the number of reviews submitted on local establishments. The study we conducted on 24,000 establishments shows us that the number increased by 32% between 2020 and 2019 to reach more than 5 million reviews. There are three reasons to it. Firstly, the explosion of local SEO and Google My Business. Today, 80% of searches are local, for example, bakery near me or courier service near me. And we can even go further by saying that 100% of the requests are geolocalized, which gives more visibility to establishments, Google listings, and therefore more interaction with internet users. Secondly, reviews have really come to standstill. Already 9 out of 10 internet users look at them before visiting any establishment, and currently everyone is posting reviews online. It is no longer reserved for a small group of people as it used to be in the past. Lastly, Google sends you an email to leave a review whenever you visit, for example, restaurant or any establishment by taking Google direction request. The second element that illustrates the importance of reviews is their impact in terms of referencing. The company Moz, one of the international references in terms of local SEO, publishes every 2 years a study which presents the main factor of local referencing, thus favoring the appearance of Google My Business listing. And for the first time since the creation of Google My Business, the second factor of local SEO are Google My Business reviews. The first one being the optimization of Google My Business listing. And when we talk about reviews, there are several areas of concern. Does the company receive a lot of reviews? Are the reviews diversified? Are the reviews answered? So if your brand wants to appear on the top of the search result, it is once again essential that you reply back to all the reviews as soon as possible. So let's see the first result. The day when people used to say, don't look at the reviews on the internet, they are just dissatisfied customers, are over now. The average score of all the listing from our client is 3.9 out of 5 compared to 3.3 a couple years back, which represents a huge increase. Here is one of the best client of our panel, Wines and Beer, with 4.5 out of 5-star rating and more than 50,000 reviews. Knowing your score is good, but responding to them is even better. Moving forward, the brand have understood the strategic importance of the reviews and are gradually beginning to respond to them. 34% of responses in 2020 versus 20% in 2019. Even if the vast majority of responses are given to negative reviews because they are the one that hurt you the most, when it took 43 days in 2019 to get a response, the average response rate was 18 days in 2020, a much more reasonable period, and it was 6 months in 2016. And by the way, we have a very good client, Soko's Kitchen Furniture Shop, which processed 98% of its review in 2 days. So moving forward, I would request my colleague Nithin to take over from here.
Thank you, Rohit, for that insightful introduction about Google reviews and their importance. Before I move ahead, I just want to remind you all to leave your questions on the chat bar, and we will try to answer them at the end. And also, feel free to engage in our polls, so that this way will help you. It will help us understand how you manage your online reputation. So, to finish on this aspect of the results from our barometer, I'd like to talk about average ratings by subject. So you may not realize it, but you are sitting on a wealth of information. You may have tens, hundreds, or even thousands of reviews on your Google listings, and you can find out exactly what they say about you. So we decided to focus on the price to give you an example. So we have one of our clients here, Vitaldent, which is a chain of clinics based in Europe. And we noticed that the rating of Vitaldent improved when its price was talked about in the review section. Now, this is a very good indicator on their pricing policy. So, moving on, now that you're familiar with the evolution and the impact of online reviews, here are three things you need to do to benefit from your e reputation rather than suffer from it. The first is responding to your reviews, then you got analyzing your reviews, and asking your customers to leave you feedback. So, why respond to client reviews? Well, there are three main reasons. The first is strengthen your client relationships. Now, reviews are an essential channel in terms of your customer relations. If you respond to a review, the internet user who submitted it will be notified, and you will show that you are listening to him and that his opinion, whether it's positive or negative, has been taken into account. The second one is brand image, or you want to reach a larger audience. So, as you know, a response can be seen several thousands of times by internet users. So, this should be seen as a way to advertise for free on Google by passing on key messages. And lastly, we got referencing, or to improve your local SEO. So responding to reviews sends a positive signal to Google. On the other hand, terms contained in your reviews will allow you to appear on related queries. But at this point, we want to warn you not to overdo it, because the main objective of responding to reviews is to improve your customer relations, and then SEO comes in secondary. Moving on, we'll talk about how to respond to reviews. Well, we recommend that our clients respond to all negative reviews and as many positive reviews as possible. And we recommend that you respond to your reviews within a maximum of 1 week, because the more responsive you are, the better it is for your online reputation. However, the ideal time I would recommend is to respond to your reviews within 24 hours, especially when there's a negative review involved. So, now concerning the answers adapted to each type of review, in the case of a negative review, the aim is to create direct contact with the customer, to understand the reasons for dissatisfaction, and to even apologize if necessary. Now, this can also be an opportunity to show the customer how to contact the establishment or the company, and to exchange views in person. So, one thing we have noticed is that after a good response and after a good after sales service, some internet users or some customers even delete their reviews or transform them into a positive one. In the case of positive reviews, a reply will thank the web user who took the time to congratulate you. So now we look at what kind of internal organization should you employ. Now, there's no real right answer to this, because each type of organization has its own advantages. But here we'll talk about a central response and a local response. So some of the advantages when you have a central mode of organization are: first is professionalism. So this will entail empathy, correct spelling, politeness, which are all key elements in responding to an online review. And this can be slightly difficult to enforce when you have a local mode of organization. The second would be responsiveness, which is essential, and it's something which we've touched upon before. You want to be as responsive as possible, and store managers will often have operational issues that will be more important to them. And also, we have SEO implications when you have a central mode of organization, because SEO implications related to reviews and responses. So, providing a response containing keywords will allow you to appear in queries related to these specific keywords. And this is one of the elements that makes this response to reviews an essential lever in your digital strategy. Now, when we look at local responses, the main advantages are obviously your store managers are the ones who meet the customers in person and are therefore more likely to respond to a remark, whether it's positive or negative. And this can also be a good way of making your store staff feel more responsible and concerned by making them aware of their customers' feedback. And finally, obviously, the workload at your company headquarters would be lightened. Now, let's look at defining response rules. So, whether you choose to manage your reviews centrally or locally, you will need to define an editorial charter per se to ensure that the messaging your company sends out is consistent. And for this, it's better to have a set of guidelines or a set of rules. So, the first one you would want to look at is deadlines. So, how long does it take to respond to a negative or a positive review? Then you could look at response rate or type of review. So which reviews do we respond to, whether it's positive or negative? Then degree of personalization. Are your responses going to be based on a template, or is it going to be 100% customizable? Then you got lexical field. So which terms are used? Which keywords do you want to enforce in your responses? And lastly, an editorial line. So, what kind of state of mind do you want to use? Are you going to use a first name basis when you address your customers? Are you going to use humor in your responses? So, these are all rules that you need to define before setting out a clear strategy. Now, let's look at analyzing reviews. So, your Google My Business reviews are an invaluable source of customer feedback. It's not just a question of responding to them, but also of analyzing them in order to draw relevant operational lessons. So, the analysis can be done in a few steps. Let's first look at assessing your situation to date. So, here you would want to know the average ratings of your listings, the number of reviews you receive. Then you can look at profiling your customers. So, satisfied customers will be the ones who leave a 4 or a 5 star rating on your listing. A neutral customer would be a one who leaves a 3 star rating, and a dissatisfied customer will be one who leaves a rating below 3. Then you can look at the quality of your internal management. So this would be the rate of your responses. And finally, themes and associated ratings. So here you can conduct a semantic analysis to find out which review is associated with which theme. So this analysis will eventually help you to make better operational decisions, and you can then take concrete steps to work on the main points of friction that will emerge. So finally, after having spoken about the response and the analysis of reviews, I would like to stress one last point: the request for a review. So why improve your online rating? Well, reviews have gradually become the primary criterion for choosing an establishment on the internet. So today, in any city, internet users almost systematically look at online reviews before going to a restaurant or a movie theater or a grocery store, for example. And as you can see on the screen here, these statistics illustrate this. So 91% of people read online reviews before going to a store or an establishment. And also, all of those who say that they look at reviews, 56% say they never go to an establishment with an average rating of less than 4. And this is quite a significant number. And finally, 15% of a listing depends on its e-reputation. So you got number of reviews, average rating, frequency, and response rate. However, I think the most interesting aspect of this statistic is that not the 15% per se, but in the previous years, we were only at 8%. So these numbers show you why managing your e-reputation is so important. And we would also recommend you not to hesitate to ask your satisfied customers to post a review on Google. Now we look at how to obtain more reviews. And to do that, I'll hand over the mic back to my colleague Rohit.
Thank you, Nitin. So, moving forward, how to obtain more reviews? You can, of course, ask orally, but there is a good chance that the customer will have forgotten as soon as he leaves the store. You can send mass invitation by email, for example, but the opening rate is extremely low, somewhere around 14%, and the opening time is likely to be long. The customer won't remember their experience. And just to precisely, this is against Google review gating guidelines. The solution that we think is most suitable is to send your customer invitation as soon as they leave the store. The best channel being SMS, because the associated opening rate is much higher than email, somewhere around 94%, and the success rate is also higher. 40% of the SMS conversion rate if the customer is notified on the spot. Now I would like to throw some light on review gating concept. Hence, I would like to insist on a concept which is still little known but which will have serious consequences in the coming year. Beware of review gating. That is, practices that aim to distort Google's algorithm by various means. According to this concept created by Google, it is not allowed, first of all, to send mass invitation to encourage the submission of reviews. Secondly, filtering negative comments to redirect only satisfied customer to Google. If Google detects this type of fraud, your listing will be suspended. So in order for an SMS notification request to work, it is important to respect two criteria. First one is communication. Indeed, the customer must absolutely have given his agreement to sending of an invitation SMS, otherwise the SMS will appear as intrusive. On the other hand, this is mandatory in the context of compliances with GDPR. Second one is timing. Timing is also key. So the sooner the SMS is sent after the experience in the establishment, the more likely it is to generate a review. Ideally, the SMS should be sent while the customer is still in the store. Well, that being said, now we have come to the end of this e-reputation webinar.
So yes, thank you very much for your attention during this webinar. We hope you enjoyed it and that you actually learned something about how to respond to reviews, how to analyze them, and overall about the importance of a strong e-reputation. So for people who don't know us, at Partoo, we help points of sale to improve their online visibility. We have three solutions with which we can organically boost your brand's local SEO. So the first one is a presence management solution. So it allows your store or branch managers to update their business related information. For example, opening and closing hours, phone numbers, COVID related information directly from their Part2 interface. And then the information gets synced on dozens of high domain authority search engines. So in this case, it would be Google, Facebook, TripAdvisor, Apple Maps, etc. Then you got the review management solution. So it's something which we've talked about in today's webinar. So our solution helps store managers to monitor local reviews received about their establishment and respond to them quickly from their Part2 interface. And finally, we've also got a review booster solution. So this allows our clients to generate more reviews and star ratings by simply taking their customers' consent to send them a link to their GMB listing via an SMS message. So, well, that's that. And now we have time ahead of us to answer some of your questions, if you have any. So, you, as mentioned before, you can use the chat system, or feel free to reach out to me or my colleague Rohit via email. And if you want to have a tour of our platform and discuss in detail regarding your brand's future online presence strategy. So now will invite our colleague Sebastian, who will try to answer your questions if you have any. So please, as I mentioned before, don't hesitate to drop your questions on the chat bar.